Hi everyone, it's Mindy Eggen and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be showing you how you can use the new Electro Neon Glitz Glitter Gel on dark cardstock. This is the new line from Rina Designs and Thermoweb, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. I'm going to jump right in using this stencil. Now this is a stencil from the Sending Sunshine Stamp and Stencil set. Now this is actually a two-step process, and this is going to help make it so your neon glitz really stands out. Now the first thing I did was spray the back of the stencil with some pixie spray to temporarily adhere it to this cardstock. Now the magic ingredient to all of this is this new transfer gel Blanco. It is white, which is going to really help make these neons pop. And I did trim off, I'm using just this polka dot stencil piece. I'm scooping out some of that transfer gel and I'm going to spread that all the way down my cardstock. Now you can see this is only creating a small section on my cardstock. Now you could mask off that area if you didn't want to trim this down, but I planned on trimming this panel down, so I'm not really worried if I'm getting any off on the edge there. So just adding a really good amount to this, making sure all of those areas are covered really nice with this white gel. And then I'll take my stencil pal and make a sweep down. Now I had thought about going back over it, but usually I ruin it when I try to go over things twice. So I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to clean off my palette knife and my stencil pal with a baby wipe. And then I'll also wipe up my craft area there when I'm done as well. And I want to rinse this stencil off immediately because we will be using it again. So I'm going to set that off on the side to dry, usually about a half hour, 45 minutes. Now this is one I had already completed ahead of time. It's nice and dry, it's bright white, which actually looks really cool on its own. But what I'm going to do now that my stencil is nice and clean is I'm going to line this back up. You can see it lines up perfectly on top of our pattern there that we already did. My stencil is still a little bit sticky from the pixie spray, even though I washed it. So it's adhering really well. And then I'm going to bring in some of the neon glitz. Now this is the Poppin' Pink and Hello Yellow. I'm also going to do Orange Glow and Screaming Green. You could just do one color, but I had to use them all. I couldn't resist. So starting with that Poppin' Pink, I'm going to scoop a little bit out and add it just to a small section on top of that white transfer gel that we added. Now I'm not skimping out on this. I applied a pretty decent amount to it. I don't want to have too thin of a layer because otherwise it's going to show more of the white than the color itself. Then I'm just going to take a baby wipe and clean off my palette knife there, still leaving my stencil in place. I'm going to come in with the Orange Glow and I'm going to spread that over another small section and I'm going to kind of go up into that Poppin' Pink. Now this is still a pretty good layer. I mean, this Glitz Glitter Gel really goes far even if I'm using a little more than I normally would. So I'm once again cleaning off my knife and coming in with the Hello Yellow. You can see it's such a bright, bright color. This is a really fun and cheerful card to make. And I honestly had a really hard time cutting this panel down when I was all done because it was so pretty. So then I'm finishing off with the Screamin' Green as the very bottom and kind of bringing that up into my yellow. Then I'll take my stencil pal and I'm going to smooth this all down. I don't want to push too hard because I still want to leave a pretty good layer on there. And then I'll clean up my stencil pal and my mat and I'm going to carefully peel this back and I'll give you a close-up look. And this is seriously so awesome in person. I love, love, love it. And you can see it's got a lot of that glitz in there, the bright neon colors. So fun to make. So I'm going to wash off that stencil and my mat and I'm going to work on some stamping. I still have some glitz to play with yet. This is the Sweet Stuff Stamp and Stencil set from Rina K Designs and Thermoweb. You can see it's got some great images on here that you can do just some plain stamping on, stamp layering. It's got the cones and the popsicles and donuts, so much goodness on here. There's also a coordinating die set that you can use and purchase separately. And there's also this stencil in here. I did cut mine apart, otherwise it comes all in one piece. So there's like a wafer type of pattern on there, and there's also some pieces for the popsicle and the donuts. Lots of fun things you can do with that. I'm going to work with the popsicles. So I went ahead and die cut 2 popsicles from a piece of white cardstock, and I'm just attaching some strips of purple tape behind one of them. And I'm going to put my die cut right back in there because I want to do some stamping. Now on that stamp set, there is actually a layering, the strips there, those stripes are the layering pieces for the popsicle. I'm going to layer one with ink and the other I'll show you, I'll do some glitz glitter gel. So I lined up this first layer onto my die cut area, holding that in place in my Misty tool, and I'm going to stamp this first section in Poppin' Pink, the neon ink. Now you can use a comfort block if you just want to use a block to stamp. You certainly can. I just trust the Misty a little more than my my lining up expertise there. So once I did that, I'll just clean off my stamp set. I'm going to pop in that other die cut, and I'm going to stamp in Screamin' Green. Now you really want to make sure you clean your stamp set good in between. Otherwise it's going to kind of alter your color a little bit. I noticed mine wasn't quite clean enough, so there was a little bit of discoloration on it. It still looks really great. It's still a vibrant green. Just make sure you're cleaning them really well in between. So that one I stamped twice, and then I switched it out and brought that pink piece back in, and I'm going to use that other layering piece for this popsicle. So I'm going to show you how this works if you just want to stamp them. So you're going to line that piece into those empty areas. Once that's lined up, you can stamp in whatever color you want. I'm going to go ahead and use the Hello Yellow Poppin' Pink Hello Yellow ink and stamp that down. So that's a really great layered look. And there's also the popsicle stick. So I'm lining that up as well in there. And I'm going to stamp this on both of my popsicles using, the Sandy Beach ink from Gina K Designs. So once I stamp that on my pink one, I'll go ahead and bring in the green, and I'll stamp that on my green popsicle as well. Now I left this area white because I'm just going to go ahead and add some different glitz glitter gel to this. Now I'm going to bring in the coordinating stencil for this. So I put my popsicle back into my template to hold it in place. This lines up perfectly in those empty areas that I left, and I'm just going to hold that in place with the purple tape. Then I'm going to bring in the new Iridescent Glitz Glitter Gel, and I'm just going to carefully apply that over those open areas. And I'll clean off my palette knife there. I don't ever want this to sit and dry because it's really hard to get off once it's dry. But once I remove that purple tape and pick up the stencil, I'm just going to wipe that down. This is a small enough area. I can kind of clean that off with my baby wipe real quick. And then I can pop out this popsicle without getting your finger in there. Pop that out. So I have one popsicle ready, and I'm going to set that off on the side to dry for a little while. And then I'm going to bring in my pink popsicle. Now, since I had already stamped that with the Hello Yellow ink, I'm going to use the Hello Yellow Glitz Glitter Gel. And that's just going to really make it pop off of there with those bright colors. So holding that in place again with that purple tape, just applying a light amount. You don't need a lot because I already have that base color down. And then I can remove the purple tape, lift up my stencil, and then pop that out and set that off on the side to dry. And I'll give you another close-up look here of how nice and pretty that is. So cheerful, just loving these neon colors. Now to work on the rest of the card, I'm going to create just kind of a little area for my popsicles to kind of break it up from the background a little bit. So I'm using the double stitched circle die from Gina Designs, just running this through my mini blossom die cutting machine with some white cardstock. And off screen, I do have a background that I had already prepped and ready to go. So this is one I had created earlier. It's the same thing that I had made for you on screen. It's just this one is nice and dry. And I have a few different popsicles here. So they're different colors than what we made in the video, but again, still same concept. Now you can see how nice and bright these colors are on that black cardstock because of that Blanco that we put down first. So I'm going to trim the panel down. You don't have to, but I wanted to. So I'm just lining this up in my paper trimmer, trimming off some of those edges to kind of clean it up. I am going to make sure that this is 5¼ inches long. That just kind of gave me a little bit of wiggle room to add to a card front and cleaned up and made those edges nice and clean. Then I'm taking another piece of black Onyx cardstock. This is measuring 4 by 5¼ I lined up my die cut circle and my top panel where it was all going to be, so I knew where to place the sentiment. Now this sentiment is coming from the Sweet Stuff stamp set, and I'm just prepping that cardstock with my anti-static powder. I will ink this up with Gina Designs embossing ink, and then I will sprinkle on some white embossing powder. Now off on the side, I have my heat gun warming up so that when I bring it to my cardstock, it is really nice and hot and I can melt that embossing powder quickly. Now once I gave that time to dry, so just a few seconds, I'm going to wipe that cardstock down with a Swiffer cloth, and that just takes away any of that excess powder that might be hanging on to my black cardstock. Now I'm going to attach this to an A2 size card front, so 4¼ by 5½. And I'm using my Gina Designs tape runner. I really love the tape runner because it's got a little wiggle room for me. So it's not going to completely hold down and stick until I push it down really good. So I have a little bit, if I was crooked putting anything on, I have that little bit of time before I actually push that down. So then I attached my glitzed panel, and I put some white foam squares behind my die cut piece. That was just, like I said, to break up my popsicles and my background so they didn't blend too much together. And then I'm just adding a tape runner to one of the popsicles, and I can add that kind of kitty corner onto my die cut circle. And I'm going to attach my other popsicle with some foam squares to kind of just give that a little bit more of dimension. And once that's done, that finishes off the card. I'm going to bring in my first card I originally created for you, which is what you see in the beginning of the video. So they're both very, very similar, almost exactly the same except for different colored popsicles. Lot of fun to create. Now, when I'm creating and I have all my glitz out and the transfer gel, I create a bunch of them at once. So these are just a few of them I did. This one is actually using the Neon Fun Flock. It's really hard to see on camera, but those are fuzzy and it's really, really cool to feel them. So I just wanted to show you a couple different things that I have kind of stashed away for future cards. Now I will have all of the supplies I used in today's video listed down below in the video description and over on my blog as well. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again, and I'll see you again real soon.